15 years ago, directional drillers were making more money than they are today, and we're
Mhm.
drilling twice as fast for half the amount of money. So there's more directional drillers leaving the oil and gas business to go do other things because they can go make the same amount of money doing something at home with their families. And
Yeah.
so, it's not an easy job to do, being out there away from your family and doing all these things, but it is rewarding.
Welcome to the Grizzled Geologist podcast. This is Keith Carden. I'm your host. I'm here with a new friend today. He's a directional driller. His name is Nathan LaRue. We met at a little lunch last week that was during a little golf tournament that was happening in Oklahoma City. A gentleman from Trace Resources, Daniel Stancliffe, kind of put together lunch, and we met over some Cajun food, didn't we?
We did. Food was delicious.
It was a
Thank
nice
you.
day.
Yeah, and thanks to Daniel for introducing us and Trace Management. Good group of guys over there.
Yep. No, that was a cool, eventful lunch, and I kind of snagged a couple podcasts out of it. So a win-win for
Yes,
me.
sir.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, well, everybody out there, make sure you subscribe to my channel. See me on YouTube. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always looking for more people to come on the show. The next little series I'm doing is going to be people on the rig and people talking about efficiencies at the rig. We're going to touch on that a little bit here, but let's go ahead and get started. Nathan, why don't you just take a second and give everybody a little bit of a background on yourself, and then we'll get into some of the topics around directional drilling and take it from there.
Perfect. So, about myself, I'm with Kingsley Directional, and I also do a couple of other things. So I work for Impulse Downhole as well as a consultant, and then for Favors Business Solution doing frac sand sales. So started out in the MWD world right out of college, got into MWD, kind of progressed into directional, then moved into a management type role, moving from that management role as a coordinator out in the field for MWD, moved into directional, then got into directional drilling sales. And since then, have kind of decided to, rather than work for someone, kind of do my own thing in a way. And so I've got some partners at Kingsley that we work with, and then also the consulting business. So what I've found here lately is, in order to be super successful in the sales side of things, you've kind of got to branch out and be a jack of all trades, if that makes sense. So
Okay. So
so
that's
yeah,
why you're still kind of crossing over, you're selling, like you said, you're selling some frac sand and stuff like that too.
absolutely, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. Well, this one, I think we're going to kind of stay away from the completions this time. I've
Okay.
wanted to have a directional driller on the podcast. I've had a company man. Next is going to be one of the drillers that I've worked with in the past. And yeah, so, this show is kind of about across the industry for some of the people that don't know different aspects of the business. um I talk a lot about geosteering on this show, but actually there's kind of another side to that same coin. And that's the people kind of just to step back, and I'm going to let Nathan kind of get into some of this stuff. But when we're drilling these wells, we have a drill bit, and connected to that are tools, and they come in different forms. But these are tools that give us information about live information about what we're seeing when we're drilling. And again, I'm going to let Nathan kind of get into that. But basically, the way that the workflow goes is geologists and geosteerers are watching where the well is. We look at the data to determine kind of where we are in zone, and we would give directions via different pathways of communication. Some people do it differently, but essentially we will send out some directional information. We need to go at a certain ink and azimuth, from this point forward, seeing what we're seeing. And that information gets relayed to the directional drillers, and they're the ones that actually enact the changes that happen at the tool. They're kind of the drivers of the tool. So Nathan, why don't you just take a second and give us a little breakdown on that process?
So on the directional side, obviously there's several different ways to drill these wells and different methods. You've got rotary steerable tools, which are kind of set and go. You've still got directional drillers. There's different, I guess, levels of rotary steerable that you might use and different companies that might go that way. But from the conventional side of things, we're using a bent motor to go in and steer the well. So if we have a target inclination, and basically the oil companies will give us a target that we need to hit and how quick they want to hit that target. And you could go from building it on tens to building it on up to 30 degrees, depending on the size of the, I guess, the motor and the well that you're on the short radius versus a typical well that you build. So in the BHA components, bottom hole assembly, if I'm talking to somebody that's never done anything on this side of the business,
Perfect.
uh, you usually have a bit and a motor, and then you've got a Monel, and then on top of your Monel, you've got your UBHO and your MWD, and there's different variations that you can set that up. Um, Basically, we set a high side inside of the MWD, and that tells us which direction we're going. We lock it in, and as we start to drill ahead, depending on the bend in the motor, we achieve those targets based on weight and differential to hit the zones that we need to hit. And it's a gradual bend, and folks that I talk to that are not in the directional business, it's always kind of fun to explain. Once you get out there and you get used to doing it, it's it's the same, almost the same thing every day, different targets, different zones. And people say directional drilling is kind of an art. You get into different formations, different areas, things drilled differently, and of course, there's so many different things like which bit you use, if you're using an agitator, if you're not using a friction reduction tool, all of those different components in the well that are going to help you achieve your target zone. So
That's really cool. And I do want to take one quick step back because we talked about a couple of things, rotary steerables versus conventional tools. And I'm going to give the dumb geologist explanation of the conventional tools. So when Nathan mentioned there was a bent motor, you can imagine pipe, we think of it as being straight, right? But what we can do is we can run in the hole, and there's a little bit of tolerance, and wiggle room in these holes. And so we can take and put, instead of a straight pipe in, one with a little bit of a bend in it. Okay. And we have a reference point at the surface of where that is on the pipe, correct? And we're able to, we can go down and using the parameters that Nathan is talking about, have a pretty good idea that, we're going to be able to get these angles and steer this well in the direction that we can. Now, there is another tool that he mentioned called the rotary steerable, and that is a little bit different. That is kind of a more, and they have different systems, but a lot of the time it's pads that instead of you having a bent motor down there, you've got a smart motor down there with pads on it that can push and cause the bit and the assembly to kind of go in a different direction. We have different ways that we communicate targets with the two different tools, and operationally when it comes to the geosteering, it is a little bit different. Um, Now, if with all of these tools, we have to get information down to the tool, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I wanted to step into one other very important aspect that you're going to hear that we're talking about, and it does have something to do with the differences between a rotary steerable assembly and a conventional tool. And these are words called rotating and sliding. Do you want to go ahead and talk about what that actually means and how that factors into the efficiencies in our drilling speeds? Because I think that this is an
yeah,
important topic.
so rotating is kind of self-explanatory, right? We use the rotary to spin the drill pipe or the BHA, everything that we've got downhole, and that's how you achieve, I guess, that you're not really steering the well, if that
Right.
makes sense. If you're rotary drilling, you can somewhat in a lateral steer the well with rotary
Hmm.
and wait. The harder you push on it, it may decide to go one direction or the other.
Yep.
Sliding is the fun part when it comes to directional drilling. For instance, if we get out into a lateral and geology says we need to come up to a different area. We need to hit this target zone. This is where the pay zone is. Um, we're going to steer that well up using a slide. So Basically, you do calculations to figure out how many feet that you need to slide to achieve the angle or hit that target TVD
Hmm.
based on where you're at. So sliding is basically you're going to lock your rotary table in, and
So
you're
you
going to.
don't spin the drill pipe. That's the important aspect. You stop drilling this. You stop spinning the drill pipe. And what's happening down on that tool?
So down on the tool, you've got your high side that is pointed in the direction that you want to slide, and you're going to basically push the bit versus rotating the bit to get it where you need to go.
Hmm.
Now, with that said, sometimes you get down a long ways in the lateral, you do have to rock the pipe a little bit, and that's where agitators or friction reduction tools come into play.
Hmm.
If you're having trouble getting differential pressure down to the bit, and you have to and your weight and your differential is not achieving what you need to get, you put tools in the hole to help reduce the friction, which allows the weight to get to the bit. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yes.
In oil and gas, you're needing to achieve the ROP uh, required so you can drill more wells, get these things done faster, and that's where
Right.
the economics comes into play. So, did I explain that okay? As far
Sort
as
of. Yes, you nailed it. But I do want to touch on a couple of other things that are kind of happening down there in the hole. So number one, it is slower, and these are the reasons why. We've locked the drill pipe in place and we're pushing on it, but there's another thing happening. We're using the mud pumps to actually spin the bit. And so just keep that in mind. When you are rotating pipe, you're rotating the bit along with it. And, people have seen, we have different types of bits. We have tricones, like a lot of people would think of. We've also got PVC bits that are kind of more scraper looking like. And what happens is so we shut that down and we turn the pumps up and we start pumping at a higher pressure through the drill pipe, and there's turbines and things down at the tool, and that actually starts turning the bit itself. Now, this again is considerably slower than when you are rotating because you have a 2,000 horsepower top drive turning all of this pipe, and it's a big mechanical process. You're able to push on the bit, put weight on it, and this is a little bit different. We're using again, we're using pump pressure to turn a bit and get try to get the assembly to point into the right direction. So I just
right,
wanted to touch on that there's a kind of a
yeah.
mechanical thing that's happening down there with
So
turning the
right.
bit still.
We talked about the components of the BHA. Of course, you've got a drilling motor also that's there spinning, internally spinning. The fluid's constantly going through there, driving the power section,
Hmm.
and it's it's very important. We didn't talk about gallons per minute going through the BHA, but the amount of gallons per minute that you've got pumping through there is going to provide hole cleaning because as you're drilling the well, you've got solids that are being churned up. Obviously, if you're drilling through a rock, all those rocks are going to be pushed up uh, on the outside, and of course, that you can get into all kinds of things coming up hole. What we do at surface in order to get the solids out of the mud to then pump the mud back through the BHA, and
Hmm.
that's something that a lot of people don't understand. There's so many components and so many operations that go into a drilling project that if you really want to dive deep, you could probably be here for days talking about what actually
Oh,
goes.
sure,
So,
short course style, multi episode, but yeah, no, we're hitting the basics though. I think that a layman would be able to come on and kind of understand what we're talking about. So I think we're accomplishing the mission for what it's worth.
right.
But so yeah, so you've been involved with this. So that's kind of we gave the nuts and bolts, kind of the mechanical aspects. We talked about we send information down uh different ways to the tool. Do you want to just take a minute and talk about some of the different ways that we can communicate with the assembly downhole?
Sure. So most of what I deal with is through a mud pulse
Okay.
on my equipment, and basically the MWD tool downhole measurement while drilling tool provides a signal that it sends up through the mud. Um, and we get that signal and we transmit it at a receiver uphole. And that basically gives us all the downhole data we need. And on the other side of things, we can also downlink to the tool. For instance, if you're running rotary steerable, even with not rotary steerable and conventional, we can downlink to the tool to have
Yeah.
it do different things. If you need to open up a pulse width on the tool, or if you're running rotary steerable, if you want to tell it, hey, we need to get to this inclination instead of this inclination, so you've got different target changes as you're going through the well. That'll come up through the mud pulse. And obviously, there's various other MWD companies that use different signals to, uh, you know, I guess control what's going on downhole. But once the data comes up, we take that off. We send an email to geology, or a lot of times anymore, everything's real time. So
Yeah.
as the information is coming up, we've got a width connection on surface, and it's going back to the oil company's office, and they can watch it in real time as we're drilling through these BHAs, or through these target zones in different areas. You guys will see we didn't talk about gamma, but
Right.
you know, they're looking for different, I guess, hot markers in the zones. That's basically going to tell them what kind of rock we're drilling through,
Yep.
um, or shale or anything else. And you see those targets come up. And while the lithology in certain areas and zone and in certain areas that's already well known, you'll kind of know where those zones are going to come in, but the lay of the land is not the same everywhere you go, and
Right.
you can move from one hole to the next hole, and generally it'll be close, but it's not always right in the same area. And that's why I think, and you could probably talk more on this, but that's why geology will end up chasing their tail here and there. um and
Yeah.
yeah, you don't like to hear that, right? uh
I don't chase my tail, but a lot of people do. But no, I'll be honest with you that yes. So that is a little bit of a dynamic there. Is that a lot of times when we're drilling these wells, it's deep and dark down there, and we can't see. And I do want to just take one minute step back. We talked about gamma ray. That's our main correlative tool. What we use gamma ray for, what that is the natural radiation, the radioactive decay of uranium, thorium, potassium, essentially naturally coming out of the rocks. And rocks in any given area kind of have a distinct signature, the way that these rocks look with gamma ray. And so we use the gamma ray to correlate where we are in section. And that is the tool that we know where we are within this rock section. And so when geologists are lost, what that is that they are having a hard time matching up what they're seeing coming from the data to the well that was drilled that provided the data for us to compare it to. And
right.
so sometimes you can cross features, like a fault that would offset, and you could have drilled into a different rock. And the job of the geologist, geosteerer, is to then find where you are, in section. And what you'll do is you would put a fault and then you adjust the rock. And that's when we start, sending emails and target changes and these kinds of things, that the directional drillers are ultimately the people that actually enact that change with the
And
tool.
we never get mad at that while we're out
Never. No, no, and the geologists are
there.
always right. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
this is, I'm gonna be honest, this is a relationship that can get a little bit dicey. And one of the ways that I've found, and in particular the way I run my operations, is that who's making the decision and who's the one kind of putting stuff to the team really makes a difference. And I don't believe in the geologist talking to the directional driller. I believe in the geologist talking to the company man or the office driller, and then putting the directive out there. So we would send a target change in an email. Of course, we were texting and calling the whole time before too, right?
Right.
So
Right.
we've been having our little side chat, and we kind of come up with a plan, and we'll send the email out, and that'll hit everybody, including the directional drillers. They're always on the distribution, and we will we'll send that out. And a lot of the time, sometimes, and never with me, of course, but these things can come like one after another, and people are out there searching around trying to find stuff. And really, that's kind of where I think that the system that I've put in place and kind of the way that I operate has kind of taken that drama out of it. A lot of the time, not a lot of the time, every time, I always pre-drill these wells. The packet that I send out hits the drillers, the DDs, it hits everybody, and they have a clear picture of what to expect. And so, even if we're in a point where there's some uncertainty, generally the pre-planning is going to set us up in a way that, hey, look, we don't know how far down we're going to have to go, but we know we're going to have to go down. It may
Right.
be a matter of when we need to do it, these sorts of things. But yeah, the geology and directional are kind of the tip of the spear, actually, of the entire operation. And so it's important that um, the geologists communicate what they need clearly. And we can get into this a little bit, like there's different ways to enact target changes, and what can happen oftentimes, and I'm sure you've never seen this, is somebody said we need to do this or that, you know, and we've had a tower change, or things have happened to where kind of this has been lost in the shuffle. So either it didn't happen or it did and it was a wrong choice. But
Right.
there's a lot of times that we come back and really the communication has kind of set us back. So what are what how does that happen on your end? What do you see?
Oh, I mean, yeah, it happens here and there. I hear from a few people that you're pretty good at it, so the target changes don't come as frequently. But yeah, I've been involved in a few different operations where, like you said, geology may have different viewpoints on something, and so I mean, how it affects us at the end of the day, it's literally just physical labor that we're having to go up there and put a new slide in the hole. It's not a big deal, but when you're having hell sliding up, and then because somebody puts you in a different zone, you've got to fight through a certain rock. It takes a bunch of slide. You may have somewhere you continue to put in, and the rock keeps pushing you down and pushing you
Yep.
down and pushing you
And the
down.
rock pushes us around. We have hard times with this rock, don't we? Like we tell it to do stuff and the rock won't let it happen.
Absolutely. But
Yep.
then you break through, and you get to where you need to be, so you think. And then another geologist comes on about 12 hours later while you've been working on it, and he says, "Nope, we need to go back down." And
Yeah.
so you're fighting to go through it again. But at the end of the day, as a directional driller, you're paid on the days, and you want to be efficient, right? You always want to be the flagship rig. You want to be the company who is exceeding expectations, who's hitting the targets when they need to hit the targets. And
Yep.
here's the crazy part: what geology does. So they're going to set their target, right? And they're going to put that well on placement. And so by the end of the well, they're going to have reset their targets. And so when you look at that piece of paper at the end of the well, it shows you outside a target zone for a long period of time. And that's what we hate from a
Yeah.
directional standpoint. We're like, hey man, we hit every target you put us on. And at the end of the well, you look at it and they say, look, you were out of target this whole way. And we're like, no, the target moved. So
And honestly, that should never fall on y'all, in terms of but that's a true think, right? So you were able to hit the targets defined by the geologist to a very high degree, but that geologist not being right then can come back and be like, well, we were out of zone the whole time. And that doesn't fall on y'all, but like I can see that that's irritating. And
yeah,
really ultimately is what it boils down to is these efficiencies that we've talked about. You know, um, what we're trying to ultimately do with this geosteering piece is stay in the right rock. And there's a couple of things you need to have for that to happen. And number one, you need to know what the right rock is, right? You need to know that that right rock exists under this entire well that we're planning to drill. And then you've got to have an idea of how it looks and where what's the general trend of this and how's it going to go. And
yeah,
so what happens, and this is where it falls on you, and we get company men and drillers starting to get irritated, is that so we have to, what we want to do is always rotate. It's so much faster. And there's a lot of cases we'll be in the right rock and rotating the bit just kind of wants to stay in there. It's kind of just really cool. And you monitor it and make the little adjustments and you stay in the whole time easy. But there's
right.
other times where the rock is out of control, and you're having to fight it all the time. And you're having to slide and that slows the operations down, oftentimes by days. And so costs start to come up. And that's where we get into this discussion about actually being in the right rock and staying in there is not, you may need to spend a little extra money on the tools that you put in the hole or having the right people watching the well. But at the end of the day, the most efficient thing is to have that bit in the most productive rock.
Yes.
And, so, if it takes a slide to get there or stay there, that's something that, that's a necessary evil. But, at the end of the day, really, this is slide versus rotating management. And the more you can keep it rotating, the better off you're going to be in terms of drill time. But you've got to keep that balance and stay efficient.
Right. And I think it depends on your directional team that you have out there. Like you said, having good people out there who understand the area
Yeah.
and who understand what they're looking for. On surface, if we're talking to people who don't know the rigs at all, you've got just about every single parameter is up there that you're watching while you're drilling these wells. The torque, your rotary, your weight on bit.
Yep.
We measure everything, and so having the right people on locations who can actually see when you hit a drilling break, you may be changing zones.
Yeah.
If you can't, if you're watching. And all of a sudden you slow down your ROP, you're probably drilling through something harder, right? And
Yep.
you don't always want to increase your rotary. The immediate thing from a lot of drillers is we hit a zone that slows us down. They want to push on it harder to break
Yeah.
through. Well, when you do that, then your direction changes, and so sometimes slowing down through those sections and not spinning the rotary quite as fast is going to keep you on target better than just pushing through it. And
Yep.
so like you said, having the right people on location who understand what's going on, who understand the area, the zone, everything that they're trying to achieve is very important.
Yeah. And that communication between, I would say, the company man, like the drillers and the geologists are really important. And, when everybody out there kind of understands, like you're saying, like we can recognize little changes and we're going to be able to then anticipate what's coming next. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting dynamic. And, I'm going to talk more about this with one of my next guests coming on. But, the drillers are incentivized to drill these as fast as they possibly can. Right.
Yes.
Like, I mean, at the end of the day, as we're all a part of the same company, it does matter. This affects the rate, the return on these wells. But, the drillers are incentivized to drill as fast as they can. The
Yes.
geologist, we're not really incentivized to do much, but we're expected to stay in zone, you know?
Right.
And so that becomes like actually the kind of internal battle of drilling these wells, and having drillers that kind of understand that slowing down is going to keep everybody looking better. And knowing that it's okay, you're going to make up for it, or at least it's not going to mess your metrics up that much,
Hmm.
is an important and critical piece, and then, um, and then it's very important that the geologists are clear. I've talked about this with the company men, but one of the worst things that can happen is when you've got geologists that are unsure of what's happening, so everybody's on edge, particularly the DDs, because they're either having to go out into the hot or the cold, put these, and we could be having drama. We could be starting to lose circulation and do these different things, but they've got to go out and type these things in and send these pulses down. And, like you said, there's always this anxiety about like the in zone versus out of zone part. And when you've got confusion and if mixed signals and stuff like that, it's devastating to the whole operation, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. And you can get out of zone and when you go in and frack these wells, which we never see as a directional driller, right?
Right.
Uh, you hear about it a few months later, like, hey, we went out to produce this well and it wasn't good,
Yeah.
right? And we think it was due to where we ended up. Sometimes the harder formations that you're in are the better producers,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And
those
that's a
aren't
fact.
necessarily quick. Those aren't
Right.
necessarily quick. So
Right.
so
But you
like
got
you said,
oil over the shakers, I mean,
yes. Yeah.
so
And so geology is, I mean, to me, I think it's the most important thing. At the end of the day, you're going to get something, and that product that you get out of the hole is what makes the whole operation go. And so you've got to stay in zone the best way to do it. And if we're talking about drillers, yes, they're incentivized to go fast. Going fast is set by the oil company. They're going to say, hey, we're going to incentivize you. These are our target number of days. But you may go in there and they decide this formation is where we need to be, not here. And so we're going to add a couple of days to that to incentivize those guys to hit these targets. And if they beat it by X number of days, we're going to give them a few extra dollars on their paycheck. And for sure, directional teams like to be incentivized too. But I think most directional drillers just enjoy their job.
Yeah.
You know,
Interesting.
it's not bad out there. You know, you're missing out on your family. Don't get me wrong. It's
Yeah.
definitely a, um, you know, it's something you do. And look, the market has changed a lot over the last 15 years. You know, 15 years ago, directional drillers were making more money than they are today, and we're
Hmm.
drilling twice as fast for half the amount of money. And so it's one of those things. I think we talked a little bit about it at lunch. You know, the market, the way that it's gone, it's leaving very little. So there's more directional drillers leaving the oil and gas business to go do other things because they can go make the same amount of money doing something at home with their families.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's not an easy job to do, being out there away from your family and doing all these things, but it is rewarding, you know.
Yeah.
And then on top, you know, the other thing, I used to have people when I was out in the field say, "Oh, I feel so bad that you're gone for 3 weeks a month." Well, you go home for those 10 days, and I'm telling you, the 10 days that you have with your family
Yeah.
after being gone for 3 weeks is
Yeah.
very good quality versus coming home and sitting on the couch and drinking a beer and not talking to your kids if you're working a 9 to 5.
I'm
So,
actually living it right now. I'm recently divorced and I live in Houston now, and my co-parent and kids are up in Oklahoma City. And I can tell you my time with them when I make it up just about every weekend.
oh
My
yeah,
time with them is better. It really is. It's more focused and, I get away, I do my work, and then I kind of just disconnect and come home and be with my kids. Now, when I'm turning to the right and drilling these wells, that you never put it down, but I still do see better time. You know, I think it's just a natural thing. Like as a parent, as a father, it's like, dude, I got to make up for this, and it makes you be. It really does. It almost makes you be a better parent and better person.
yeah, yeah.
So,
You're focused on what you missed, and
yep,
you're jealous of what you missed, and you want to make up for it while you're home.
yep.
Sometimes that comes in the way of spoiling your kids,
It's
and
all right.
you know, it's all good. So
I
they're
love
worth
them.
it, and they
I
grow up
love it.
fast. They do
God,
grow.
they do. They really do. Hey, well, we're doing really good on time, man. Why don't you just take a second and plug Kingsley? Let's, I'll pop some website up on the final edit here,
Okay.
and then you're on the hook for words of wisdom. Everybody has to give words of wisdom at the end.
All
So,
right.
no warning ahead of time, but something that people can take with them.
All right, sounds good. So, Kingsley Directional, we're a full package directional drilling company. We provide MWD and directional drilling services. We've got coordinators in house. We've been around for over 10 years, and we drill a lot of wells in West Texas, Oklahoma, East Texas. We've gone up to all the way up to North Dakota. We've got a good group of people here, and like we talked about over lunch, I think it's the quality of people that makes these wells, you know, I guess
Better.
successful and better. Um, as far as the MWD side of things, Dusty Sewell, he's been in the business for a long, long time building MWD tools, and he's really well respected. I think I told you while we were sitting at lunch, we hadn't had an MWD failure in almost 3 years.
That's
So
awesome.
they're great tools. They stay together, they stay on bottom, and we've got a lot of great people. In addition to the full package work, we do offer sputter work, and actually
Okay.
my side of thing, I did a heck of a lot of sputter wells for a long time. We were the number one manned directional company in West Texas for sputter work. Now the market's changed a little bit, and that's something I talked to you about. Everybody's out there chasing the cheapest
Yeah.
the cheapest thing, and you know, we do own all of our own equipment, and we've done a pretty good job, but the market's kind of priced us out where some of these folks with investors are coming in and doing the wells for next to nothing.
Mm,
But if you want good quality and you want great service and you want to stay on bottom, we're definitely a good option to come after.
I
So,
love that. And those efficiencies actually matter, being able to stay on bottom and every Tom, Dick, and Harry coming in with a lower price and green crew, they just can't cut it. How about she give you some words of wisdom? You're on the hook.
so, words of wisdom. Do we want to target this at oil and gas or?
Whatever you want. Life doesn't matter.
Okay, words of wisdom. Uh, God first, take care of your family, and drill ahead.
Oh,
How's
I love it. That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm after. And we'll make a cut out of them. Hey, but to everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Nathan LaRue from Kingsley Directional. Make sure you go to my YouTube channel, Grizzled Geologist. I'm on LinkedIn, always looking for more people. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Nathan. And to all you directional drillers out there, slap it down 2.5 degrees. We'll see you later.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, Keith.
Bye now.
You have to work for it. Don't be crazy. And work for your money.